SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to OptimumCBD.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs. It is the 4th of February today, and that means we're 3 days away, 3 days away from trials.
Yeah. Yep, Sharks Warriors Friday night, the first pre-season challenge game.
That's round 2. Why is the NRL showing me round 2 and not round 1? There we go. 2nd of March. Sunday. What?
I think you're looking at the regular season fixtures.
I am. 7th of February. Yes, 3 days away. 3 days away from the Sharks Warriors. Followed by the Panthers Raiders on Saturday, and that'll kick off the preseason. And I'm excited to announce that I think it's next week. Mitchell Pearce will be coming in to preview the season with us, so we can get his thoughts on what he reckons is going to happen. Let me just confirm. 11th of February. Yep.
Awesome. 7 days from now.
Yep. I wonder how he thinks the Roosters are going to go.
Yeah, well, we'll have to ask him about that. That'll probably be top of the list, I'd say, given their various recruitment changes. And when I say changes, I mainly mean players lost and not very few players gained. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to get his thoughts on that, exactly. For sure.
But meanwhile, Laurie Daly started his job as the New South Wales coach by organising I don't know what you call it.
Like a meet and greet pre-season squad, 28 players.
Visit to the hotel room.
Yeah.
Hotel boardroom, not a hotel room.
Yeah.
And he's notably left out James Tedesco and Nicho Hynes.
Yes. Yes, they weren't part of that meet and greet. And Daly did say that, look, that doesn't mean, necessarily that they won't feature in the series, but you'd have to think it at least means that they're not going to be first cabs off the rank. You'd think they're only going to get a look in if there are injuries. And you can't really blame Daly really when you think about it. I mean, the difficulty that Tedesco and Nicho Hynes have is that they both featured in game 1 that New South Wales lost last year. And I know we had that situation where Joseph Suaalii got sent off for that hit on Reece Walsh. But still, I mean, what do you do? I mean, Mitchell Moses replaced Nicho Hynes for games 2 and 3. New South Wales won games 2 and 3. Dylan Edwards replaced James Tedesco for games 2 and 3. New South Wales won game 2 and game 3. So, you're going to stick with a winning team, aren't you? I think that's the real problem for Tedesco and Nicho Hynes. And on the surface, you might go, oh, gee, that's a bit rough, them not being, a part of a 28-man squad. But then if you think about it, if you go, well, if they're not going to be a part of it, well, then there's no point in them being there. So I can see where Daly's coming from on this.
With the halfback position in particular, Nicho Hynes, or the halves positions, you'd have to say Nicho Hynes is 4th in line now.
Well, this is the thing. He's behind, obviously he's behind Moses, the incumbent who got the job done. He's behind Nathan Cleary as well, and you've also got Jerome Luai in the halves there as well. So there's a lot in front of Nicho Hynes at the moment, and the 2 times that he's had an opportunity, he hasn't done much with it. I know one of them he only got about 10 minutes off the bench in one of them. And in the other one, as we say, most of the game he had to play with 12 men against a 13-man Queensland side. But what can you do? It is what it is.
Well, Mitchell Pearce 2.0. What's going to happen is Nicho Hynes will play another few games, and the New South Wales will lose, and then we're all going to be rooting for him in 4 or 5 years, and he's going to get a recall, and then finally win a series with a clutch play, and then we'll all be happy for him for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
As for James Tedesco, he doesn't need a redemption story. All right, he already has been in multiple New South Wales winning sides. He's just not even close now to the first choice fullback.
Yeah, he's just reaching the last years of his career, and that's going to happen to anybody in professional sport. Time catches up with everybody, and as you get older, younger players are more likely to take your spot.
Yeah, fortunately for fullback, you got to be fast, and he's 32 years old, and man, it sounds so weird. Like, he's old. He's so much younger than me, but he's old, So
he's not old, but as a professional footballer, he's old.
Yeah, exactly.
But in life, he's not old. Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. He's achieved everything in the game, so it doesn't matter anymore. It happens to everyone. They either, retire from representative football, or they get retired. No Queenslander would ever retire from representative football. Cameron Smith said that when Denny Badiris retired from representative football. Of course, Cameron Smith famously retired from representative football. So, yeah.
Nathan Cleary, Mitch Moses and Tom Trbojevic were among the players who were a part of that that meeting, I guess you'd call it, in a hotel conference room at Brighton Les Sands on Saturday. But yeah, again, I don't have an issue with it because there's no point in having them there if they're really not a part of Daly's plans. At least he's not, stringing them along. Wouldn't you rather know if you're Tedesco or Hynes and you're not really a part of his plans? Well, you'd rather know up front. You'd rather him be up front, and that's what he's done.
Didn't James Tedesco also only get the call up for Game 1 last year because Dylan Edwards wasn't?
That's right. Edwards originally was picked for Game 1, but injury got hold of him, and Tedesco was a late inclusion for that game. And then, New South Wales being hammered in Game 1 the way that they were, albeit with 12 men, as we pointed out. Of course, they were going to go back to Edwards after that, given he was originally selected and then he was fit for Game 2. So that's how it played out. So obviously now, with New South Wales winning that series last year, going to be very difficult for Tedesco and Nicho Hynes to get a look in now. It's only, let's be honest, it's only going to be injuries that allow those two to come back in now.
Tom Trbojevic was injured at the time, and Latrell Mitchell was either suspended or injured at the time as well. So it kind of went Dylan Edwards, Tom Trbojevic, Latrell Mitchell, James Tedesco for Game 1.
That's right. And Latrell came back and played in Game 2. Yeah,
exactly. So it's to be expected. I'm not shocked. So Nicho Hynes is always going to cop the blame for all the losses because, look, he only won his first big game this year when the Sharks won a finals. They'd gone a number of years before that without winning a final. So there is still that question mark over his performances in big games for sure. And there's a lot of examples of him, having to kick that final conversion to win the game and stuff and missing. So once he overcomes that, maybe he'll get his redemption story because Mitchell Moses and Nathan Cleary will be injured and Nicho Hynes will get his recall and he'll win one, and then we'll all be happy for him.
Yeah, I mean, it could happen. You never know. Anything's possible. Injuries are very common these days, and multiple players can go down injured. There's a lot of football to be played before the State of Origin series. So, as we say, barring any injury, they're not going to be part of it.
Look at James Tedesco. We all knew he wasn't going to be picked in Game 1 last year. And then the first choice fullback Dylan Edwards was out, and then Tom Trbojevic was out, Latrell Mitchell was out, and there was no one else. So James Tedesco got his recall basically. He wasn't going to be picked at all. Everybody knew.
Yeah.
And then so Nicho Hynes, there's still room for both of them if it happens, but you're not gonna call your fourth choice fullback into your meeting, But
that's where I guess Daly's saying, it doesn't mean that they won't be part of it. He's just covering his bases there. That's all he's doing. He's just going, well, look, you never know. I could get a raft of injuries and I may need those players at some stage. And that's the thing. It's a long series as well. Just because you don't get picked for Game 1, that doesn't mean you won't feature at all in the series. So I guess Daly's just keeping all his options open there. Of course, he's not going to come out and say publicly that certain players are barred from selection. He's just not going to do that. Yeah. Why would he do that? He has nothing to gain out of doing that. I think he's keeping his options open there.
A bit of a beat up for the news article anyway, because it's not like he called Tyrell Sloan the 16th choice fullback into into the meeting either. You know, he's gone. There's a limit to how far I'm going to go down the track.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I think he's right. There's no point in stringing players along if they're not going to be part of it. If they're not in his plans, they're not in his plans. At least they know where they stand. I mean, and at least for those players now, they can just focus on club football and they don't have to think about state of origin.
They should think about organising like New South Wales and Queensland should do the same event where every eligible New South Welshman goes along to some kind of event.
Yeah, that'd be they'd need a big conference room.
It's going to be like 400 people or something, but it'd still be like really an interesting thing, right? Chance to meet everyone in rugby league and, they can invite all the legends and... Anyway.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be organising catering for that.
Oh, God, no. And also they should let a fan, i.e. me, attend. But in other representative news, Nicho Hynes and Cody Walker are going to be skipping the All-Star games.
Yes.
Just skipping. Are they injured?
No, and so...
I think Cody Walker might be injured.
And so doesn't this show... Nicho Hynes and Cody Walker are skipping the All-Stars game to prioritise their pre-seasons with Cronulla and Souths. I think with Hynes, it's a lot to do with, he's flying out to Vegas with his Sharks teammates soon after the All-Stars game on February 15. So it doesn't really make sense for him to play. You're right. Cody Walker is battling a calf issue, picked up in the pre-season. And so I guess from his point of view... Well, he's got to prioritise getting right for round one rather than playing an All-Stars, than worrying about an All-Stars game.
Yeah, he's currently in doubt for round one.
Yeah, so, if you're in doubt for round one, well, you're not going to be playing the All-Stars game. But doesn't this just highlight the farce of the decision to allow Latrell Mitchell and Josh Adokar to use the All-Stars game as part of their suspensions then, when you've got two other stars of the game who aren't even taking the game seriously enough to play in it? It's an exhibition game, and this shows why that decision is such a joke from the NRL.
Yeah, if you can just pull out for Nicho Hynes is not injured. If you can just pull out for really no reason and you're not forced to play, then how does that make it suspendable a game?
That's the thing, and under normal circumstances, players aren't allowed to skip rep games unless they have an injury or a valid reason. So I guess we're to take from this that the All-Stars game, it's not a real game. It's just an exhibition game because they haven't had to give, a valid reason, these two players.
Nicho Hynes hasn't, but Cody Walker has given a valid reason. He's injured. It's I can't fault Nicho or Cody Walker. As you just said, if he's in doubt for round one, then he shouldn't be playing now. But Nicho Hynes getting prepared.
That's the thing, but I guess... Like Cody Walker, he could really play if it came down to it. But all it is, we know now that this game's not to be taken seriously then, because he's making no effort to get right for it.
If you can just say, I don't want to play, then the game doesn't count. And therefore, it shouldn't count for suspensions. No. I don't want to play. Okay. That's why trials don't count, because players can say, and clubs can say, he's not going to play, even if they're fit. Right, because there's they're as you said, they're required to play, and yet Nicho Hynes doesn't have to play. He's not required to play. The All-Stars can't name him because he's like, no, I'm not going to play anyway. But Latrell Mitchell and Josh Adokar can use it for a suspension. Why even bother asking him to even use a game for suspension? Why don't they just wipe the suspension? Would Josh Adokar and Latrell Mitchell play in the All-Star games is my real question. Would they actually play if the NRL said, you know what, let's just forget about the suspension. You don't have to do it anymore. It's done. Josh Adokar we're just going to reduce it by a week. Yeah. And Latrell, you don't have to do it. So why don't you both play in the All-Stars?
I think, put it this way, I think that Latrell Mitchell wouldn't play in it. There's no way that Wayne Bennett would want him to play in it. So Bennett would have really been pushing to have... Because Bennett wouldn't have wanted him to play in it anyway. Bennett would want him focused on the Rabbitohs this season. Obviously, he's had a couple of years now where, he's got easily distracted by other things. He hasn't really had his mind on the job with the Rabbitohs for a long time now, Latrell Mitchell. So... Yeah, you're right. There's no way Bennett would have wanted him to play in this game. And as for Addo Carr, you got to think Jason Riles is a new coach at Parramatta. Josh Addo Carr's come off a terrible exit at the Bulldogs. There's every chance that Jason Riles would be in the same boat at Parramatta. He'd be thinking, no, you've had a terrible exit to your other club. We're in charge of you now. You're doing what we want. We don't want you getting distracted by an All-Stars game. We want you to focus wholly and solely on the Eels this year. So you're right, there's every chance that both those players wouldn't have played in that game anyway. And so that this just makes it even more of a farce.
I feel really bad about how the All-Stars game has gone the way of City Country like this. How it's just like basically a nothing game to the league. When it first started, Preston Campbell was the architect behind it. It was massive. Every single Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander player wanted to play, and they were all behind it and everything. And now, you have guys going, no, I don't want to play, and it's now against, who is it against? The Maoris. Which, that'd be really cool. I'm sure the Maoris are really into it. As we've talked a lot before about how passionate the New Zealand, Tongan Samoans and stuff, Samoans are about their country more so than a lot of other countries. But these games that they have, like I've mentioned before, I love the City Country. It was actually my favourite rep game. I have, I think, 3 country New South Wales jerseys. And, when Matt Cooper went through his nonsense that made them change the rules, as a biased One-Eyed Dragons fan, I would defend him. But even now, even at the time, I knew that what a load of crap I was spouting.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't play that Thursday night game, but I'll be fit for the Friday Dragons game. That was, and so they changed the rules because of that. If you're out of the rep game, you can't play that week. It was all Matt Cooper's fault, and that comes down to the league. They're going to put on a fixture, and they're going to brush it. The players, the fans, and everyone else are going to also brush it and make it less than. It was a really, really big thing when it was at first launch. Preston Campbell, that's I don't know what the Titans stadium is called now. Was that the Titans Stadium?
It's like C-Bus Super Stadium or something.
Whatever it is, just the Gold Coast Stadium. It was, had fan interaction with voting for who the teams were and all that kind of stuff. It was like a sellout crowd, massive TV ratings, and then World Cup's on, so we're not going to have the All-Stars game. That kind of showed how little they rated it, and then continued. And for a league that talks so much about, close the gap and they have the Indigenous around and stuff like that, I think the fact that they've treated the All-Stars game so poorly really speaks to how all the close the gap Indigenous around stuff is just more virtue signaling by the league.
Yeah.
I mean, we're off track. We were talking about Hynes and Cody Walker, but it's a disappointment to me that the All-Stars game is such a, how far it has fallen. I have an All-Stars jersey because I support the All-Stars, the Indigenous All-Stars team, because there was no way at the time when it first launched I was going to support a team full of British people and New Zealanders and some Australians over a fully Australian team. That's how me and a whole bunch of people that I knew thought of it at the time. It was full Australian team versus a bunch of foreigners, so we're behind the Indigenous boys. And they've really just ruined it. It was launched in 2007 or something.
Was it maybe 2010? 2010 maybe.
It hasn't taken long for them
to.
Basically, hasn't taken them long to kill it.
No, well, I mean, City Country was great for a while, but then after a while, nobody took it seriously, and then they got rid of it. And it seems
2010 it was.
It seems like the All-Stars game is going to be in the same boat. Great for a while, but then eventually nobody takes it seriously. Everyone pulls out. And then so they're going to get rid of it. What's happened is the All-Stars game, I think it's going to be killed off by the Las Vegas doubleheader.
It's such a shame to me.
Clubs are... The game are going to take the Las Vegas doubleheader a lot more seriously than the All-Stars game. And I think the All-Stars game will be killed off because of the Las Vegas doubleheader here. It's just... The schedule's just now too crowded. It's just too hard to have the All-Stars game now. If clubs aren't taking it seriously, if they're pulling all their players out of it, well then what's the point?
Exactly.
There's
That's
no
the
point.
thing with the city country. The city people who played for the city country are like Trent Barrett, Andrew Johns. Like the top players played city country when it was actually like really popular, and then because it's always coaches behind it, it's not players behind it, and then it becomes players behind it. It's like this self-fulfilling prophecy. The coaches tell the players to be injured for the city country game that's on a Thursday, and then they'll name them for the Friday team because the club match is more important to making the finals. Then the players see the best players are not being included. It's becoming second, third, fourth tier players. So the players go, well, it's not that big of a game, so I just won't do it. And then the fans go, well, why do I want to watch a bunch of Jersey flag representative players pretend to be, and they might have guys like James Tedesco might have been in City this year. It's like guys who aren't going to get picked for New South Wales, and a bunch of fringe first graders. Why am I going to watch this? So then the NRL goes, oh well, the fans have given up, so we're just going to cancel it now, and it is a shame. I like. The city country was basically an audition for State of Origin, the New South Wales State of Origin team. And
that's the thing, you mentioned the fans. I remember when it was the NRL All-Stars against the Indigenous All-Stars team, and the fans actually voted on the team. It was so good. So by taking the NRL All-Stars out of it, look, that's their decision, okay, but then you've taken the fan voting out of it, so you've lost that fan engagement. So that, coupled with the Vegas doubleheader now in place, and these clubs pulling all the stars out of it, this game's not going to be around much longer.
I don't think so. I give it another couple of years. They've killed it in 10 years. It's a shame to me. I love these games. But Kevin Walters is still copping it. I think he's not bringing it upon himself. It's all the ex-Broncos best mates of his that keep talking about him.
Yeah, to be fair to him, that he isn't bringing it on himself, but I think what's happening is because his mates like Gordon Tallis are out there defending him so strongly, well, that's sort of keeping it in the news, and that's leading to others to sort of push back against that, and one of those who's pushed back is Paul Vautin, of course, a long-time host of the Footy Show, former Queensland coach, coached them to that 3-0 series whitewash in 1995. I believe they recently had a reunion for that, it's either just happened or it's about to happen. A 30-year reunion for that 3-0 whitewash win coached by Fatty Vautin in 1995 for Queensland. So, some strong quotes from Paul Vautin. He says, the fact is Brisbane won 3 of their last 13 in 2024. He said that to the Courier Mail. He also said, and I quote, the Broncos got away with ill discipline last season, and Michael Maguire, will not stand for that. It will be a really tight, disciplined team. So, Paul Vautin, I guess, seeing fit to come out and defend Michael Maguire. And look, good on him. Look, the stats don't lie here. Again, Kevin Walters only reached the finals once in his 4 seasons as a head coach. And they really dropped away, the Broncos, at the end of last season, missing the finals. Comparing that to Michael Maguire, who has 2 premierships, one in the Super League, one with South in 2014, plus some very good representative results, coaching New Zealand to a Pacific Championship title win in 2023 and New South Wales to that Origin Series win last year.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head because Gordon Tallis keeps talking about it. It keeps Kevin Walters in the news. Yeah,
and I think, and it was also, I think it came out that, that they made out like like Michael Maguire was behind the firing of Alan Langer, and I think Wally Lewis wasn't happy about that. But then it came out that no, that's not what happened. Alan Langer actually left on his own accord there. And so that's the thing that and Steve Renoff was another one who wasn't happy about it. So these Broncos legends sort of, I guess, lurking in the background. And this is the thing, again, we mentioned with Gordon Tallis, he doesn't even regard himself as a Bronco anymore. He's said a number of times he's a Titan now. But yeah, he is good mates with Kevin Walters. So these Broncos in the background, former Broncos sort of chipping away. Well, I think Paul Vautin has seen, he's sort of seen it as an opportunity to go into bat for Michael Maguire here. And look, good on him. I think there should be more support for Michael Maguire because the indications are that Michael Maguire will get results with the Broncos. His career record indicates that. And I know it didn't go well at the West Tigers, but no one's gone well at the West Tigers. The problem at the West Tigers has never been the coach because no coach has done well there. The problems run deeper than that. You got to look further than that to look at Michael Maguire's. You got to, as I said, you got to look at his Super League premiership and his premiership with Souths in 2014. Because remember the Souths premiership in 2014, that was their first premiership in decades. So, he got the job done there. He ended that premiership drought. Let's see if he can end the Broncos premiership drought as well.
It's just all too binary. It's like politics right now with the Broncos where you're either for Michael Maguire or you're not. And if you're not for him, like Gordon Tallis and Corey Parker and so on and so forth, no matter what decision he makes, it's a bad one.
Yeah, 100%.
I think Kevin Walters was the right choice to get them moving forward. These guys need to take a step back and start their non-biased view, like looking at it through a non-biased lens and realising Kevin Walters was unsuccessful at the Broncos. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
He couldn't get the best out of them. They have a star-studded team and he couldn't get the best out of them. They're going to be missing their first choice 5'8" for the first 9 rounds this year. Do they really think that Kevin Walters missing his first choice 5'8" for the 9 rounds would have been able to get the Broncos over that hurdle?
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right, isn't it? I mean, they need to realise, the Broncos, that it's not the 1990s or the early 2000s anymore. Like, they've got to look forward. They've got to look at somebody. They've got to look at somebody from the outside now who's got the job done elsewhere. They can't look internally because they haven't got the job done for so long internally. They haven't won a premiership since 2006. So it's no good looking within here. Yeah. They needed to bring someone in from the outside, and they've done that. And I think it's smart that they've done that. Yeah, I know Kevin Walters was a part of that golden run they had as a player in the 90s and the 2000s. But, those days are long gone now. They need to look forward. They need to look at somebody who's got the job done, relatively recently at club level as a coach. And they've done that. I think they've made the right move. I think these Broncos legends really need to just accept that and move on and move forward and give Michael Maguire a chance here.
Yeah, Michael Maguire's not Donald Trump, guys. Kevin Walters isn't Kamala Harris. And the Bulldogs have made this awesome announcement that I love, that they want to be allowed to put the players' surnames on the back of the jerseys alongside the numbers. I really love that idea, man. I like that, there was a couple of years ago, I can't remember who it was, floated the idea of not having the allocated jersey numbers, the one as the fullback and so on. And letting people pick, like, say, the NBA does and things like that. And I don't like that idea. I actually like the way that rugby league is 1 through 17, sometimes up to 22 or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the middle of the game they tear their shirt and they change from 17 to 22. Or sometimes they don't fit the 17 and have to wear the 23. But, they want to put the names on the back of the jerseys. And, I like the idea. I always have. I like that people get in America you get a number 23 Michael Jordan jersey with Jordan's name on the back. Whereas in Australia you get a number 12. Broncos jersey, you know. Especially because there can be multiple 12s throughout the year on 7s or 6s or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, you'd think it'd have to work from a merchandise point of view, wouldn't it? With kids, it resonates with kids. They get their favourite player's jersey with the name on the back. Definitely a good idea. Super League teams did that in the only season in 1997, had the names on the back. And the Melbourne Storm did it in their debut season in 1998, had the names on the back.
They have it in Origin.
Yeah, they have it in Origin too. Yep, they do.
I have a number 3 Gaznia jersey, you know. A Dragons number 3 Gaznia jersey. I had got Gaznia's name put on the back because he was my favourite player. Even though they didn't have the names on the back. But I wanted people to know that I liked number 3 Gaznia, not number 3 whoever else fills in.
Yeah.
And it was actually in the year where he was roving between number 1 in attack and number 6 in defence or whatever the weird crap, I think it was Nathan Brown put on him because he got that really rich contract and they wanted him to touch the ball now more. And that year I got like, no, he's a 3, number 3, guys. So it was a political statement as well. Yeah, I like the idea, man. I really like the idea that, like the kids can get, you know, if their favourite player is Matt Burton, they can get number 6 Matt Burton.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been used in a lot of overseas sporting leagues, but yeah, we haven't seen it much in rugby league, have we? But yeah, the Bulldogs are hoping that this will be in place in the 2026 season, and they're hoping that they can be a part of the Las Vegas games in 2026, and by then they'll have their names on the back of the jerseys for that Las Vegas game.
Everybody should do it. Everybody. The NRL should go, all right, we're going to do it now. Because the jerseys are printed pre-game anyway. They don't... The jerseys you buy at Rebel are not the jerseys that the players wear on field, even though they say they're on-field jerseys, right? They actually print the jerseys every game for that game. They get the numbers put on every game before every game because it can be like some guys are large and some guys are extra, extra large and so on and so forth. So why not? You know, why not?
Yeah, I think it's a positive. It'll be a positive move for the game for sure. They've got to be looking at new ways to engage with the audience, with the fans. And I think this is certainly a positive move. Absolutely,
it's especially cool if players are moved around because of different reasons. Like when your centre goes off and Damien Cook has to go into centre. It's cool for that. Or it's cool for if, for this game, Matt Burton had to move to centre in because Stephen Crichton was injured, so they named Burton at centre. And for that game, you get a number 3 Burton. Or number 4 Burton, I don't know, one of the centres. And then that also gives you gives them, the players and the clubs, extra added... they do those charity auctions and stuff like that of the game-worn jerseys. I'll get the 2026 game that Matt Burton had to play centre instead of 5/8. It's like a rarity or whatever. So I like it. I reckon they should go ahead with it. I reckon every club should do it.
Yeah, and it helps, I guess it really does help the fans identify with their favourite players more, fans can get, Burton number 6 on the back of their jersey, but if he's actually got his name on the back as well, then they go, oh, he's got the exact same jersey as me, as opposed to him just having number 6 with no name on it. Yeah. It brings the fans closer to the players, and I think that's a really good thing for the game.
I hope so. I hope to see it. And now, Souths want to move their home stadium. They've been at what is it now?
Accor Stadium.
Since it was ANZ. And they have special changing rooms and stuff like that. So even when other clubs play there and it's their home team, Souths get to use their own special dressing rooms. But, it's pretty well documented that Accor, ANZ, Stadium Australia, whatever, is soulless.
Yeah.
And ANZ, they want to move to Allianz. And Allianz is pretty schmick since it was renovated.
Yeah, so the Accor Stadium, as it's now called, in other words, the Sydney Olympic Stadium, which is probably a better name for it, or certainly a better name for it. Well, that opened in 1999, just prior to the Sydney Olympics. So that stadium's nearly 30 years old now. Whereas Allianz Stadium, it only reopened in 2022. You're right, I think we need to see more teams playing at Allianz Stadium rather than just the Roosters. I think it might have been, I think it was last year. It may have been last year or the year before, but the Bulldogs played against the Roosters in Gosford. They didn't get to play them at Allianz, and you just really want to see your team playing at Allianz Stadium. It's in the city, it's near all the pubs, it's a lot easier to get to.
Yep.
Transport wise, it's much easier to get to than the Olympic Stadium at Homebush. So I think the more teams that could be playing at Allianz Stadium, the better. I hope the Rabbitohs move there. It'll give the fans a lot more opportunities to watch games at Allianz Stadium.
I think so. The two best stadiums from a transport perspective now are Allianz and whatever the Parramatta one is called.
Combank.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up with it, isn't it?
Exactly.
The names change every year.
Those are also both like really nice stadiums. So, I watched the Canterbury home game there when they had to play there for some unknown reason. I don't know why, and it was really awesome. And I was there the other day for the soccer, Western Sydney Wanderers. But yeah, I've said multiple times I actually hate those suburban grounds. I think the best stadium is Allianz Stadium because it's the most central. It's now renovated. It's very it's nice. The screens are big. It's easy to get to. It has seats instead of a dirt patch that people they call the hill. And so having South moves there, but I still think it's weird because they have that whole thing at ANZ that they decked it out and everything, and they signed this long-term agreement and everything like that, and now they want to go move to the completely different stadium. And there's the Waratahs, is that the New South Wales team?
Yeah.
Waratahs play there, and Sydney FC also play there. I'm pretty sure. And there is some overlap in all of those competitions. The NRL kicks off in March, and A-League finishes in April or May. Rugby Union starts it's on now, right? Nobody knows.
Yeah, who knows? Usually the Super Rugby starts a bit before the NRL season.
Is that what it's called?
The Super Rugby the format changes every year, and it's impossible to keep up with.
Yes, it's on. It starts next week.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So 14th of February, and it finishes. It's 16 weeks, so there's a lot of overlap. It finishes in May. So there would be an overlap of Rabbitohs, Roosters, Waratahs, Sydney FC all wanting to play there. And so it could really screw up some scheduling. It makes it quite difficult when you have 4 teams playing out of one stadium.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just looked it up. The Bulldogs have played the Roosters' home games against the Bulldogs have been played in Gosford the last 2 years. So ever since Allianz Stadium's reopened, the Bulldogs haven't had a chance to play there. It's just an example of there not being enough games on at Allianz Stadium. You want to see more games on there. I think if Souths move there, we will see more games there, and I think that's a good thing for the game.
It's a much better stadium than ANZ. And finally for Rugby League, Melbourneite, an noted AFL fan, and complete another dribbler, Waleed Aly, has floated an amazing idea to play every final round game at the same time because some soccer competition did it.
Yeah, it's a farcical idea. I think Waleed Aly should stick to hosting the project, to be honest. I don't know how. So basically, Waleed Aly wants the NRL and the AFL to adopt the English Premier League model of having every game in the last round on at the same time. Now, that would play... first of all, they wouldn't be able to do that under the TV rights agreements. The TV rights agreements would forbid them from doing that. The TV networks want the games spaced out and not on at the same time because they want more eyeballs on the games. But you can't blame them for that. They're paying billions of dollars for these TV deals. So, of course, they want as many eyeballs on the product as possible. You can't blame them for that. That's just business. So the logistics of this really don't work. And the reason that model works well in the EPL is because they don't have a final series. So the last round is a lot more significant in the EPL than it is in the NRL or the AFL. In the EPL, in the last round, often you have teams going for the title in the last round. You also have teams trying to avoid relegation in the last round. So there's obviously a lot more hinging on the last round in the EPL, whereas in the NRL and the AFL, all it is the last round of the minor premiership. That's all it is. So there's key differences here. So what happened was all 18 games in the Champions League kicked off at the same time.
Games. Oh my God.
At the same time in Europe, and that's where Waleed Aly got his big bright idea from and said, oh yeah, we should do this in the NRL and the AFL as well, have all games on at the same time. You'd just be taking eyeballs off the games with all the games on at the same time. The games where, and there are a lot of games in the last round where there's nothing at all to play for. If you've got two teams who can't make the 8 playing against each other, well, under this model, absolutely nobody would watch those games because everybody, their focus would be on the games that actually do mean something.
There's not even, we don't have the television network to be capable to do that,
That's the thing. I mean, there's not 8 sort of 9 gem stations or 8 Fox Sports channels.
The reason they can do it in Europe is because their internet is better, and so they have more digital channels and more ability to stream the games as well. In Europe, you got to remember it's also Europe. It's not like England. It's Europe. It's a whole bunch of different countries. The teams are played in different locations. Even if there was any point to it, we just don't have the infrastructure to do it. If people can, I know everyone has short memories, right? When Optus took the streaming rights for the World Cup, I think 8 years ago, so there was going to be no World Cup soccer games on television. It lasted like 1 week. It lasted one round. And everyone blamed Optus because what was happening was in certain areas of Sydney especially, but other places as well, you just couldn't watch the game. Because the way our internet infrastructure works is if you have a lot of people in your area on the internet, your internet slows down because thanks Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull, right? So they couldn't put them on. There's not enough TV stations, first of all. Like, Foxtel doesn't have 8 rugby league channels. Channel 9 doesn't have 8 channels. And then you could say, well, they could stream them because, you can spin up 8 live streams. But we don't have the internet infrastructure to do it because everyone in your area, especially in Western Sydney, would be on the internet trying to watch rugby league, and no one would be able to watch it. I spoke last week about how I've cancelled KO. I've had KO since it first came out, and I'm a pretty tolerant person when it comes to technology. I find bugs in Facebook and stuff when I just, I know that people who have companies that have less funding aren't going to iron out all bugs, but
But you make a great point there, though. You make a great point. A lot of people don't think about the technological side of it either. There's those considerations to make as well.
It's not possible. Honestly, it's not. Yeah. Like, my there's a reason we have peak times. When you buy the internet in Australia, and it has, like, these are your speeds. You buy, like, 100 megabit internet, and it says, like, peak times max speed, or average peak time speed is, like, 80 megabit. It's because our internet infrastructure just isn't good enough to handle everyone. If everyone had fiber to the premises, and everyone had, NBN fiber to the premises, everyone in Australia, it would be okay. But the simple fact is we have fiber to the node everywhere and then copper wiring. Like, where I used to live in Begstown, it was really funny when they were installing the NBN and the guy said, this is the most bizarre place in the entire world, right? So, because I was in a newly constructed house, we were the first people to move into our block of units. It was really disturbing on the first night because we were behind a park was behind us, and we were the only house with lights on. So bugs flocked to the window. We moved into something. The window was covered in bugs and moths. It was so, I don't want to live here anymore. Thank God when other people moved in, all the lights spread out, right? But when we finally got NBN, I was talking to the NBN technician because it was like the third time they tried after asbestos and all this kind of stuff. And he said, this is really bizarre. You've got fibre to the curb. So outside of our block of units, fibre died there. Stopped there. From the curb, and we had it was a 40-metre thing to the building, we had copper wiring. And then, in the building, it was fibre. So he said, if they had to replace that 40 metres of copper wiring, you'd have super fast internet. But because of your 40 metres of copper wiring, everyone in this unit has shit internet. It's like, fantastic. And so, but you can see how like just 40 metres of copper wiring, and that's a like really extreme case. But heaps of people have fibre to the node, which can be, 3 kilometres away, 5 kilometres away, and then copper wiring to your house, and that copper wiring is being shared amongst everyone on the same thing. Like another story, like one of my mates, he moved next door to his exchange when it was ADSL. He moved right next door. And his internet was really bad because the way ADSL worked was, it goes and it shares, and basically there's like a slight drop in quality as you progress further away from the exchange. He was like months and months and months, like asking all of his technical people he knows, and then he finally got like a technician to come to his house and paid and stuff, and the guy was like, you're at the end of the line, you're not at the beginning of the line. So he's next door to his exchange, and he was like to the right of it, but the internet was being transmitted left. And they're coming around. So it was like, you're last. So you have the worst internet. Yeah. And you can imagine trying to broadcast 8 games in high definition through that kind of nonsense that we have. So,
and one other point to make about this Waleed Aly proposal is, we often have, there are some seasons where the top 8 is already known before the last round. And in fact, I think that's the case most of the time. Like, not every year are you having years like last year where, I think it might have been the Dolphins and the Knights who played off in the last round for the 8th spot, I'm pretty sure. So that happened last year, but a lot of years, the top 8 is already known before the last round. So if the top 8's already known and, the minor premier is already known, this idea would just be a complete fizzer because there'd be no reason to do it at all. You'd have all these games on at the same time and you'd go, well, what's the point of this? We already know who the minor premiers are and we already know who's in the top 8.
Yeah, you can't use the outliers to prove the point. Like, 2009 was awesome. I was at the Dragons game where across town the Bulldogs were playing the Tigers. And who were like, if the Bulldogs won, they got the minor premiership. If the Bulldogs lost and the Dragons won, they got the minor premiership. Yeah. And whoever was it David Gallup at the time?
What year, sorry?
2009. I don't know, whoever the CEO was like sitting in his car wondering...
Yeah, I think it would have been Gallup at that time.
Stadium he has to drive to to get to to give the shield, Yeah. That's... I can remember it very clearly because it was an outlier. It's not something that happened. Last year we had Spoon Bowl.
Yeah, we had Spoon Bowl. And again, I'm pretty sure it was the Dolphins and the Knights it was basically a playoff for 8th spot and the Knights won it. And so what you got to think about is, why would that scenario be any better? Why would that scenario change if all the games were on at the same time? It was still the playoff for 8th spot, even though it was on its own, as opposed to all the games being on at the same time.
The other thing, right? We have a limited number of games, so there's a limited number of chances for that kind of thing. It'll only ever be like maybe one game that matters that round. Whereas when you have 16 games, and as you said, you got multiple teams fighting relegations and multiple teams with chances of winning the thing. And soccer has a super complex scoring system where it's like, if you win, how many goals you score. They have draws, they have like extra points for away goals and all this kind of weird stuff. There is actually generally 3 or 4 teams that could be fighting to avoid relegation, and 3 or 4 teams that are fighting for the premiership. And the last round will actually decide it. Whereas in the NRL, there'll be like one game in the last round that matters.
Yeah, and even if the minor premiership is up for grabs in the last round, it's still only the minor premiership.
It's only one game.
It's called the minor premiership for a reason. It's not a big deal.
It's if you had 6 teams fighting out for the minor premiership, and all of the games were at the same time, it'd be cool.
Yeah, but even then, it's still only the minor premiership, right?
But it'd be cool. but you still don't have to play them at the same time. Anyway, yeah, it's a silly suggestion. It doesn't work for multiple reasons. You can't take ideas from competitions that are structured completely differently and try and fit them into it's like taking a square peg and fitting it into a circle hole.
Yeah, Waleed Aly should really go back to just criticising everything Donald Trump does on the project.
Well, they should cancel the project. That's absolutely.
Does anyone watch that show anymore?
Yeah, there's about 17 people. Out of the 17 people who still watch free-to-air TV, I think 4 of them watch the project. Every night. Religiously. They all have blue hair and then all their names are Karen. Oh, that's going to get me in trouble. Moving on to tennis. The Australian Open is over, but of course there's still a lot of stuff to talk about, especially Novak Djokovic's nonsense injury.
Yes.
Apparently it's not as bad as was people thought or was thought at the time, and I reckon that just feeds into my conspiracy theory that the Australian Open organisers told him go out onto the court because that way we don't have to give refunds.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it would have cost them a lot of money if they had to refund all those tickets.
Yeah.
It certainly wouldn't surprise me. This is just bizarre, isn't it? There's even talk that, the Qatar Open is being held from the 17th to the 22nd of February. There's even talk that he could be fit for that. Not confirmed, but it's now a possibility he may even play in that. So how could you pull out of a Grand Slam semi-final, only one set into it, and then, there'd be a good chance of you being fit for a nothing tournament in Qatar from February 17 to 22? I'll tell you what, Novak Djokovic, he really is an enigma. He's difficult to understand. And this really just feeds into that. This really adds to it. This is very, very strange. So some people said, but he might have only played one set because the injury got worse. Yeah, but then it's come out that it's not even a serious injury, though. So, how does this work? This is very strange. As we said, there's no way Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal would have done this. Would have gone into a Grand Slam semi-final and bailed after one set of it. With a Grand Slam trophy on the line, this is a guy who's won 24 Grand Slam titles. He would have been going for a 25th. It would have been his 11th Australian Open title. And he just pulls the pin after one set.
No,
something
bizarre.
Really doesn't add up here to me.
It's super bizarre. I really reckon he didn't want to play and they convinced him to, so they didn't have to refund the money.
Is it possible that, and sort of adding to the conspiracy, is it possible that he's grown so tired of the hostility he's gotten from the Australian Open crowd for so many years now? And maybe in the back of his mind he knows that this was the last time he was going to play at the Australian Open. So is it possible that he sort of went, well, I'm going to give you an up yours on the way out here. I'm going to bail after one set and you see how you like it?
Could very well be. It could very well be.
And look, I know there are people like Andy Roddick who said, yeah, well, obviously he's felt like he wasn't going to win the tournament. He's not going to throw away a Grand Slam trophy over this. And look, I get that, but that doesn't change the fact that this injury is now not very serious after the fact. And even though he posted that MRI scan on social media as if he's looking for people's approval or something, even after all that, this has turned out to not be a very serious injury, and there's every possibility he's going to be available to play again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, he should refund everyone their money.
There was thought, the thinking was after that, well, there's no way he's going to play again before the clay court season. He may not even get back on until those lead-up events just before the French Open. And now all of a sudden he's probably going to play in this Qatar Open at the end of February.
Are they allowed to needle painkillers in tennis?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think they are.
That's what treatment is, right?
Yeah, you are allowed painkillers, yeah.
So he could have taken treatment and come back out and played. It's very, just like we talked about it last week, right? Kept saying for the last couple of weeks, he's actually becoming pretty likeable, and then, no, he ruins it for himself.
Yeah. But that's the thing, I guess if Andy Roddick was watching our podcast. I'm guessing he may not, but you never know, do you? He could be watching. We have had a bit to say about him. If he was watching, he'd go, "Oh, look, what would you know?" As if he's going to throw away a Grand Slam trophy just to get back at the crowd. This is the thing, like, two things can be true at the same time, right? It's true that, he may not have got through the tournament, but it's also true that, well, he could have kept playing because this wasn't a serious injury. He could have kept going, but he's bailed after a set. As you said, maybe a conspiracy for two reasons. The organisers asked him to play because they didn't want to refund the money, also because he probably didn't want to jeopardise, and again, I'm not sure, but if he had pulled out, maybe he wouldn't have got the same prize money as he would have by actually taking the court and playing a set. Well, you'd have to think that. I mean, if the crowd are having to pay all that money and they're not getting a refund, well, that means Djokovic gets all his prize money.
Yeah, he gets all his prize money.
Yeah, so
he has to play to get his prize money.
So that's the thing. Two things can be true at the same time. Yes, it could be true that, he may not have had it in him to come back from a set down and beat Zverev and then beat Sinner in the final. But he could have also fought a lot harder in that semi-final. And again, if it was Federer or Nadal in the same position, they would have done that. Even if they thought they couldn't have won the whole thing, there's no way those two walk off the court after one set in a Grand Slam semi-final.
Yeah, agreed. And speaking of Federer and Nadal, and Djokovic, excuse me.
You all right?
Yep. Don't die on camera. Tim Henman says Djokovic craves the affection of Federer and Nadal. Now, I think it's very obvious. But he's not capable of achieving it because every time he comes close, he does something.
He burns people, yeah.
And he's like really spectacularly explodes it,
Yeah, 100%. 100%. We've had a number of examples over the years. Remember when, and I guess it's probably, as you said just before, people have very short memories, and that's true. But you might remember there was a period when the COVID-19 pandemic first started where it was forbidden that you'd have big gatherings. It was forbidden that you'd go to parties and things like that. In the very early stages of the pandemic where everybody was isolating. And you might remember that Novak Djokovic threw that party and invited a whole bunch of people. So that's one example of him just burning everybody when people were trying to like him. Another example was in the 2020 US Open where he hit that ball at that Lions woman and got disqualified from the tournament. That was another example where he's got people offside. When he got deported from the Australian Open in 2022, look, I think that was more on the Australian authorities. I think in that instance...
Why did they give him a visa?
In that instance, the Australian authorities looked a lot worse than Djokovic, obviously. In fact, he came out of that with people having sympathy for him. But every time you have sympathy for him, then he comes out and does something like what he did against Zverev in the semi and pull out after one set. Every time, as you said, every time you're willing to give him the time of day, he just burns you. So it's probably time for him to just stop trying to be so liked. Just accept that you're the villain. Realise that being popular is not as important as being the greatest of all time. If it was up to me and I had a choice, I'd rather be the greatest of all time than be the most popular of all time. It's not a popularity contest.
In the Ricky Gervais show, Extras, Ricky Gervais's character wants to be a serious actor. But keeps telling everyone he wants to be a serious actor, and then he rejects a whole bunch of stuff because it's not serious enough, and his agent basically gives up on him. So he confronts his agent, and his agent says, "Look, you're not a serious actor. Do you want to be a serious actor, or do you want to be rich and famous?" And then he finally accepts, "All right, I actually just want to be rich and famous." And so then he does all these nonsense roles, like being on Doctor Who and stuff. And that's what Djokovic needs to understand. Do you want to be loved by everyone, or do you want to be rich and famous in the Grand Slam time? Just sit down with your agent and just say, I want to be rich and famous and the greatest of all time.
He shouldn't care what the crowd think. He doesn't know them personally. So why does he care so much what they think all the time? So Tim Henman, he's a 4-time Wimbledon semi-finalist. The quote from him was, you dig a bit deeper, and in my opinion, he has always craved the affection of Federer and Nadal. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. That's my opinion. I think we all agree with that.
Absolutely.
That's been fairly obvious for a long time. And he's done things like trying to buddy up with, because for some reason, and I don't know why, Nick Kyrgios seems to be very popular with a large section of the population, or certainly a section of the population. And you can tell that Djokovic is just buddying up to him to try and, because he wants some of that Nick Kyrgios popularity to rub off on him. He does things like that where you just go, look, just you shouldn't be worried so much about earning the approval of the crowd, who you don't even know who these people are. You don't know them personally. It's, as I say, it's not a popularity contest. The record books are going to be there for a lot longer than the crowd support is going to be there.
Look, in 50 years, no one's going to remember that everyone hated Novak Djokovic.
No, they'll just look back at the records and go, oh, back 50 years ago when it was Federer, Nadal and Djokovic dominating, gee, Djokovic, he won out there. He had the most Grand Slam titles. He had the most weeks at world number one, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Nick Kyrgios, you don't name drop him then. He's the shock troop in my war against Jannik Sinner. he's still going.
Yeah.
He's had another dig at Jannik Sinner for his doping case, which will be heard in 2 months. I like it when he bags Jannik Sinner. It's the only time I like Nick Kyrgios right now.
Yeah, so what happened was, Jannik Sinner started a YouTube channel. He started just after his Australian Open win, his very recent Australian Open win. And Nick Kyrgios couldn't help himself. He's posted on X, and I quote, "What happened a year ago?" As if to say, if you're going to do it's a behind the scenes YouTube channel, like a behind the scenes look. And Kyrgios wrote another quote. He said, "Can he give us a behind the scenes of what happened a year ago? Asking for a friend." In a further post he wrote, "He has brought out a YouTube channel. Hopefully he has the behind the scenes of what happened a year ago. Media team is working overtime, mate. Disgusting." I'll tell you what though, there is this hearing with Jannik Sinner. I mean, a couple of months at the Court of Arbitration for
April
Sport. This
16 and 17.
Yes, this WADA hearing. Once that's run and done, I think we'll all move on from this. I have a feeling that Nick Kyrgios is never going to move on from this, though, and for the rest of eternity, he's just going to be taking snipes at Jannik Sinner on social media.
Yeah, there's two kinds of sports fans, man. There's the ones who never forget that John Jones is a drug cheat, and there's the ones who just keep saying he's the GOAT. I'm the Nick Kyrgios style, and no matter what Jannik Sinner does for the rest of his life, if he breaks all of Djokovic's records, I will always have the asterisk next to it. It's like, yeah, but he took drugs, because
if he gets a sentence though and serves his time, will you still?
If they strip his previous titles,
that's the thing they're not going to do.
Yeah, I know. That's you can't accept it though, because you get caught, not because it's the first time you've done it. I mean, you think that that's it because you're stupid and that's the first time you've done it, but you get caught because their testing or whatever is better. And so what it says is he was probably I have to be careful what I say because he's so litigious. What it can say is that allegedly he was possibly doping prior to that.
Yeah.
And we know that USADA has been letting people compete. It's not USADA that tested him, but we know that USADA has been letting people compete, allegedly, while continuing to fail drug tests. So, if the person, when was it? It was April last year where he actually tested positive.
Yeah, March last year at the Indian Wells event. Yeah.
So, if he had been banned then and not won anything, and then that you can give him the benefit of the doubt, right? So he gets suspended, doesn't win anything, all goes smoothly. He comes back and then he starts winning. You can go, all right, that was a blip on his radar. But the fact is, because of the nonsense around it, it brings everything into doubt. There's two ways it brings everything into doubt. One is nonsense, like Jannik Sinner, and the other one is getting done again. So John Jones popped twice, right? So, multiple times, and then they let him off. John Jones, they let him off because he only had a picogram in his system or whatever. bro, the acceptable level is 0, okay? Not a picogram. A picogram is too much. A picogram is more than 0. So John Jones is in doubt, like, to my mind, and people like Nick Kyrgios' mind, because he continued to test positive. Jannik Sinner's got a star against his name because of the nonsense. Hiding it. And because hiding it, now that we know what we know about USADA and the fact that they hide it because those people continue to test positive, but they turn other people in.
Yeah.
Whoever it was, IATA or whatever. Who
ITIA, yeah.
They did the testing. How do we know that ITIA doesn't have that same deal going on with USADA and Jannik Sinner didn't turn other people in? Who was the other person that got done most recently? Swiatek.
Yeah, English Swiatek.
How do you know Jannik Sinner didn't turn Swiatek in? You know, like, that's the thing, because there's shenanigans around it, he'll forever be. So if they stripped him, and that was the actual punishment in the end, they were like, we're retroactively suspending you and stripping you of all your titles from what you've learned since last year, then I can accept that maybe we'll go back to normal. But like I said last week, I think it's most likely what's going to happen is it's a retroactive suspension, and so you don't have to serve any suspended time. That's what's most likely to happen.
Yeah, and look, I did do an article on this on our website that went up on Friday, I believe. Yeah. So I have taken issue with how things have played out. I mean, you've got a scenario where, you know, you just had somebody win the last 2 Grand Slam events, the US Open and the Australian Open, who tested positive to closterbolt in March last year. And, you know, while the ITIA originally decided they weren't going to sanction him properly, I mean, his ranking points and prize money was stripped from the tournament, but who cares about that? That's nothing. They just basically let him off, basically. Yeah. But, you know, WADA have since decided, well, that they're going to appeal, and that appeal is going to be held in April this year. So you've got a scenario where this is an unresolved matter. It's an unresolved matter. And yet this player is allowed to just continue playing as if nothing's happened. He's won the last 2 majors. He's beaten players who've never won a major before. Taylor Fritz at the US Open, I mentioned it in the article. And of course, Alexander Zverev in the Australian Open final. Taylor Fritz, that was his only appearance in a major final. Lost to a player under this cloud. Alexander Zverev, that's his 3rd appearance in a major final. Lost to Jannik Sinner in the final. The cruel and harsh reality of professional sport is that those 2 may never get an opportunity to play in a major final again. And so if he is banned in April, well, how are those 2 going to be feeling? They're going to be going, well, if he had been banned when he should have been, which was just after he tested positive in March, well, he never would have been available to play against us in these finals, and there's every chance we would have won those Grand Slam titles. So I said in the article, I believe those 2 have been robbed of Grand Slam titles as a result of this. This is an unresolved matter, and it won't be resolved until April. You know, so that doesn't sit well with me. You have somebody under this cloud who's just allowed to freely compete. How does that work?
Yeah, and it's a joke, really.
And this is the thing. Some people may say, oh, yeah, you're innocent until proven guilty. But that's not in this case. He tested positive. Yeah. So the proof is there.
He was proven guilty.
Yeah. So that doesn't stack up. It's not an innocent until proven guilty scenario because he's tested positive.
He was already proven guilty. Yeah, we'll see what... It's going to keep going until April and afterwards unless something comes out proper.
I'm really looking forward to that hearing being held, and then I know you're still going to hold on to it, but I don't think you'll be as bad as Nick Kyrgios.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Look, this is the thing, all right? We think what we think about Jannik Sinner, but the way Nick Kyrgios just keeps going on about it, bringing up, that's not normal. That runs deeper. There's a personal agenda there.
I think I pointed it out when I talked about the BJJ guy, Craig Jones. Like, Jannik Sinner doesn't comment back. You know? You notice all these news articles that Nick Kyrgios says this. Silence from Jannik Sinner. Yeah. And that's the real problem I have with like, obviously Jannik Sinner's not going to talk back to me because he's definitely not aware I exist. But he, you know, when Nick Kyrgios tweets and then the news publishes it and so on and so forth, Jannik Sinner knows it happens. And Jannik Sinner isn't commenting back. And so Nick Kyrgios' behaviour where he continues to go is kind of stupid. It's kind of ridiculous. It's over the top. Like, it's time to give up, bro. You just all he's doing now is being petty.
That's the thing, like and you may agree with Nick Kyrgios, but you're not making the point a million times on social media. Like, it's not normal. Like, you make your point, all right, you can have your say. You do it once and you move on. You don't keep going back to it every second day.
I comment on it when there's a new update.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I think I did a social media post a couple of weeks ago when whatever it was, they announced that would be the appeal. Oh, no, it was when Swiatek got her suspension stuff. Yeah. I commented about tennis as a whole on social media, right? I don't need to comment on it again until April.
And because that's the thing, like, we're on a sports news podcast, so...
Well, we're really talking about Nick Kyrgios right now, not Jannik Sinner.
Yeah, that's the thing. Whereas Nick Kyrgios, well, he's got no reason to mention it. Yeah. He's so just another professional player.
In April, depending upon the outcome, if it's a good outcome, I'll comment and say good outcome. If it's a bad outcome, I'll say, man, tennis is really still showing how stupid they are about this. And I don't... Like, even if Jannik Sinner intentionally did it and he cheated his thing, I think... The real villain in the whole thing is tennis because of their different treatment of different players. Like, that's my real villain there. You know, like, my real villain in UFC and MMA is USADA, not the fighters that get picked. And the whole doping thing. So I'm pumped for the enhanced games. You know, like, that's the thing. Like, I don't. If taking drugs is legal, I'm acceptable of taking drugs in the sport. But if it's against the rules, it's cheating. And the acceptable amount of all the banned substances is 0. So if you go over 0, you get suspended. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the concern that I have personally over the enhanced games is, what long-term health impacts would it have on the competitors?
That's a different thing to the rules.
But in principle...
Yeah, I'm talking about the rules.
Yeah. But in principle, at least everybody knows where they stand.
Yeah,
and
it's in the rules. You're allowed to dope, okay? So you're allowed to dope.
Yeah.
Okay? In the enhanced games, in the running, you're not allowed to punch opposing runners, right? And if somebody punched an opposing runner because they were on a roid rage while they were running, I would call for the banning of that person because it's against the rules. In tennis, it is against the rules to have cluster ball in the system. The acceptable amount is 0. Jannik Sinner had more than 0 and hasn't been suspended.
That's the thing. That's where this argument of, it was such an insignificant amount. Well, that doesn't matter.
They have a rating for how much you're allowed to have. It's 0.
Yeah.
You know what's more than 0? Anything other than 0.
Yeah. 0.001 is more than 0.
Yeah, it's still not 0.
Yeah.
It's not in the rules that you round off to the nearest whole number either.
Yeah.
Because if you did, it'd be 1. So that's what I mean. That's my biggest issue with it.
Yes.
Have you watched the documentary with Jelena Dokic?
Yeah, I did. I
haven't watched it. It's on my queue is like 700,000.
Yeah. If I were you,
but I read about it.
Yeah. If I were you, I'd put it at the top of your 700,000 queue. Yeah. I mean, it was obviously very unpleasant, but certainly worth watching. Just terrible what Jelena Dokic went through at the hands of her crazy, deranged father, Damir Dokic. There were some just examples of terrible behaviour. She beat Martina Hingis when she first came on the scene in 1999 as a 16-year-old qualifier. She upset Martina Hingis in the first round at Wimbledon. And made a run to the quarterfinals. Now that was when Martina Hingis was number 1 in the world, and I think Dokic she was about 128 or 129 in the world, something like that. And so in the whole crowd, everybody stood up and applauded after the match, except one person. Guess who? Damir Dokic. Wouldn't even clap his daughter under those circumstances. This shows just what this man's like. And then we get to some more serious examples. I think she got to the semi-finals at Wimbledon, lost to Lindsay Davenport in the semi-finals at Wimbledon one year. And then she obviously she was dreading what would happen to her after losing the match. What's my father going to do to me here? And he went back to the hotel and told her not, and she got hold of him on the phone. He was drunk. He was a lunatic alcoholic. And he told her not to come back to the hotel, and she had nowhere to go, nowhere to stay for the night. The dad just said, Damir Dokic just said, no, I don't care where you go, just don't come back to the hotel. And then there was another far more serious example where Dokic recounted a horrific incident when she was knocked unconscious when her father Damir kicked her in the head following a loss. Dokic said, and I quote, I remember he was so mad that he goes into the bathroom with me, locks the door, and he beat the crap out of me. He slammed my head against the wall multiple times. He was kicking me. My shins were so bruised I couldn't walk. He actually punches me in the head, and then I went unconscious for a little bit. He also stepped on my head as well. End quote.
Scumbag.
So this just shows what an absolute scumbag, absolute disgrace of a human being that Damir Dokic was and still is.
Miss Scumbag.
Absolute scumbag.
It's great that she's been able to come through it as such a impressive tennis personality and commentator.
Yeah.
Honestly, scumbag. Absolute scumbag.
Yeah, what a disgusting, pathetic human being he is.
Weak and a bully.
Yeah.
I can't stand bullies.
No, treating your daughter that way, that's just completely unforgivable.
Yeah.
What a moron, what a lunatic.
Exactly. Moving on to some good news, though.
Yes.
The Davis Cup started, and Australia has beaten Sweden.
Yeah,
so far.
Yeah, they got a 3-1 tie victory over Sweden in Stockholm. John Peers and Matt Ebden, that combination that won the Olympic gold medal in the doubles, they've teamed up again to deliver Australia that win in this Davis Cup tie. What's next? Australia will host a second round qualifying tie on home soil against Belgium. So yeah, well done to John Peers and Matt Ebden there.
Where's the home final going to be?
The home tie, yeah, I'm not sure if a venue has been announced. I will check that out and see if that has been announced.
Australia versus Belgium?
Australia versus Belgium, yeah. Alex de Minaur and Alexander Vukic both won their singles rubbers as well. Australia hasn't contested a Davis Cup tie on home soil since 2022, of course. We've had that scenario at the end of the years where it's all held in one location, usually in Spain. It was held in Spain last year. That was Rafael Nadal's farewell to tennis. Yeah, I'm not sure if that venue has been announced for that Belgium tie. I don't think that it has
yet. They haven't announced any venues for round 2 as yet.
Yeah, okay. So we will keep you updated on that.
Hopefully it's in Sydney.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Well done, Australia. Hopefully we can...
Yeah, well done, Alex de Minaur, bouncing back from that... I guess horror quarter-final loss to Jannik Sinner.
Yeah, is Jannik Sinner in the Davis Cup? Because Alex de Minaur doesn't want to face him ever again.
Yeah, well, thankfully he doesn't play for Sweden, and he didn't have to deal with him the other day.
Yeah, that's it for tennis. There'll probably be less tennis over the next month or so, but it'll come back strong.
Yeah, Jannik Sinner and Nick Kyrgios and Novak Djokovic, I'm sure.
Nick Kyrgios will keep us in news. But meanwhile, over in cricket...
Yes.
I saw this yesterday and I didn't really understand what happened. So Peter Laylor's been sacked by SEN. Mm-hmm. He's been labelled a freelance journalist now as well by SEN.
I think because he left the Australian. He was the Australian's chief cricket writer, I'm pretty sure, and he left that job and now he freelances. I think. Well, he's lost this gig with SEN, but I think he's still got gigs with Channel 7 and the ABC. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's over pro-Palestinian social media posts that he made, and because his voice now triggers Jewish listeners.
Yeah, I think that to me. Look, again, I didn't put this down because we're going to get into the politics of it. We're not getting into the politics of it. That's not why I put it down. I more put it down because. And I think this triggering, that seems like a bit much to me, to be honest. But anyway, the reason I put it down was because, I don't care what this guy thinks about that. This guy's a cricket commentator. Yeah. I don't care what he thinks. And, I don't care what he thinks about the conflict going on with Palestine. people will turn around and go, oh, he's entitled to his opinion. It's like, yeah, all right, he is. But I don't care what he thinks about that. SEN don't have to care what he thinks about that, and SEN don't have to hire him either. SEN aren't stopping him from saying what he thinks. They're just saying, well, if you're going to say that, well, we don't want to hire you. Yeah. And they're in their rights not to hire him. You know what I mean? Like, who cares what this guy thinks about what's going on?
Yeah,
with Palestine?
I don't care what anyone has to say about Palestine and Israel or Ukraine and Russia or anything, to be honest, because you can trace everyone's opinion back to a different TikTok video anyway.
Yeah.
The people's citations always end up just being their information, and we'll get to Bryce Mitchell soon. Their source of information is just another TikTok video, and then they're just repeating the nonsense they hear on TikTok. SENs and every single employer is actually, in modern day and age, especially media personalities, your contracts have clauses about them being able to fire you for posts. A lot of people, I noticed a lot of comments on the internet about this where it was like, look what happened to Israel Folau. We're still talking about Israel Folau that many years later. Everybody should know, look at what happened to Israel Folau, and then people are congratulating Israel Folau by standing by his beliefs and not backing down and so on. But simple fact is, if you're in the public eye, you are a public figure, and you have a contract with a public company, you got to be careful what you say on social media. And that's it. Too bad. Yeah. Sorry, mate.
That's the thing. It's not a freedom of speech issue. He can say what he wants. Yeah. But SEN don't have to hire him.
So that's one of the things about freedom of speech, right? The confusion of freedom of speech. It frustrates the crap out of me, where people will be like, it's freedom of speech. He can say what he wants. Okay, first of all, freedom of speech is an amendment in the term refers to the amendment in the American Constitution that protects people from government prosecuting them about what they say.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with employment.
Exactly. Yeah. It has absolutely nothing to do with what your employer puts in your contract for what you're allowed to say.
Yeah.
Nothing. So you can't say he's protected by freedom of speech. First of all, it's Australia. We don't have freedom of speech in our constitution. You doofuses. Can't say he's protected, because even if we were protected by whatever amendment, First Amendment for freedom of speech, it has nothing to do with your employer.
Yeah.
Nothing. So
they don't have to employ you if they don't want to.
Exactly.
But I thought it was a bit weird, and this is a quote from Layla. He says he's talking about Craig Hutchison, who's the boss of SEN. He used to host the AFL footy show. I'm not sure what else he's doing now, but he's a prominent.
He's the boss of SEN.
Yeah, well, he's a prominent, but he's a prominent identity in Melbourne. He has been for a long time.
Yeah, he owns basketball teams.
Yeah. So he says, and I quote. This is a quote from Layla. He says, "The following day, Hutchison, that's Craig Hutchison, told me that because the sound of my voice made people feel unsafe and that people are triggered by my voice, I could not cover the cricket for them anymore." I thought that was a bit much. Just say, look, we don't want to hire you anymore if you're going to put that stuff out on social media. Oh. This triggering, that's a bit much for me. Like, come on, I don't have a problem with SEN letting him go. That's their right. That's entirely up to them. But don't say it's because his voice triggers people. Like, come on, that's a bit much.
It triggers seriously? Those same blue-haired Karens that I talked about before. Honestly, that's all. It triggers the same blue-haired Karens that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
And there's also that Sri Lanka test going on. Everybody's scoring hundreds.
Yeah. Australia's gone 1-0 up in that 2-test series in Sri Lanka. Australia winning that test by an innings and 242 runs. It wrapped up on Saturday.
It's Oprah giving out centuries, man. You have one. Everybody gets one.
They went through those Sri Lankan wickets very quickly on Saturday. Well done to Usman Khawaja, man of the match with 232. Captain Steve Smith made 141. And well done to Josh Inglis making 102 on debut. That's his only test innings so far. So he's now got a higher test batting average than Don Bradman. He should retire now.
Yes.
So well done to Josh Inglis. And well done to Aussie spinner Matthew Kuhneman as well, taking 9 wickets for the match as well. The second and final test of the series begins on Thursday.
Yeah, so Josh Inglis, Steve Smith, and Usman Khawaja between them got 4 centuries.
Yeah.
How many of these guys got centuries in however long, you know?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, Sam Constas would have been spewing that he didn't play in that game. That was a perfect opportunity for him to make a lot of runs and gain some confidence.
That's really
and you know what, he probably should have played, you know, I think that they needed to give him the opportunity. All right, he failed in his last 3 innings of that India Test series, but he made that really good 60 in his first Test innings.
Yeah.
They really should have given the young man an opportunity here against a weak attack to make a big score and boost his confidence. I would have thought that would have been a better option rather than to move Travis Head up into the opening spot. I think they should have left Travis Head there in the middle order, although to be fair, Inglis took his opportunity here on debut, making a century. But still, I would have thought Sam Constas would be feeling pretty filthy about that. That was a really good opportunity for him to fill the boots and make a lot of runs. He was robbed of that opportunity, I feel. And that's a bitter pill to swallow because it might be hard for him to get back in now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they may take the view of the second test of Sri Lanka of, well, we're going to win this test, so let's just blood some young players. He may get a gig, but he may not. And, you know, that's going to be hard. There's limited opportunities coming up. I think their next test is until that World Test Championship final against South Africa in the middle of the year. Yeah. At Lords, and then after that, I think it's the Ashes next summer.
It's a light cricket season this year. This whole year.
Yeah,
I was looking it up for Smart Play.
Yeah,
it's very light, even all around the world.
Yeah, I mean we got the Champions Trophy, but that's in another format of the game, in the ODI format. So
yeah, it's unfortunate for Sam Constas, but well done, Australia.
Yes.
4 centuries between 3 players who haven't scored centuries in God knows how long.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to be fair, Steve. Yeah, I know you. Yeah, you're not being literal about that. Yeah. I know Steve Smith did make those 200s against India, but on the whole, you make a fair point. Steve Smith, overall, over the last 2 or 3 years, he hasn't been at his best, but now we are actually starting to see some signs that he is getting back somewhere near that. I know it was a weakened attack against Sri Lanka. There's certainly no Jasprit Bumrah in that Sri Lanka bowling attack, But that having been said, he did make 2 Test centuries against India with Jasprit Bumrah in the attack. And then he's gone and made another 100 against Sri Lanka as skipper here. So well done to Steve Smith.
He's aging like fine wine.
Yeah, and look, Usman Khawaja, I mean, that double century, this is the thing, that might be enough to get him through to the Ashes next summer now. With limited Test cricket between now and then, you know, you'd have to think he'll hold on for that Ashes series. Yeah.
That's it for cricket. We'll update you on the next.
Yes, well, it starts on Thursday, the next test. So we'll have Piercy here on Tuesday. So we're not really going to.
It'll be finished anyway. It starts on Wednesday. Oh no, the ADI is Wednesday, 12th of February. Okay, yeah. So it starts on Thursday. It'll probably be over by Tuesday.
Yeah, I guess we're probably not really going to be asking Piercy what he thinks about. The Australian batsman scoring a bunch of centuries, but anyway.
Over into other sports, we'll kick off with Canadian ice hockey. So Donald Trump, of course, one of the things that he did during his campaign was to say he's going to lay tariffs on every country unless they do what he says. Mm-hmm. And of course, all of the leftists everybody thinks I'm right wing, but I'm not. All the leftists came out and immediately criticised him, said he doesn't know how the economy works. Whatever he's saying is nonsense. He's going to ruin the economy. He's going to cause inflation and stuff. A couple of weeks ago, one of the other things he also said he would do is start deporting criminals, illegal immigrants who are criminals. So he sent a bunch of dudes to Colombia, and the president rejected them. So we're not accepting them back. And he said, okay, cool, 25% tariffs. And like an hour later, okay, we'll accept them, right?
Yeah.
But the latest one now is he's threatened to implement tariffs on Canada and Mexico unless they do things to strengthen the border and stop the flow of fentanyl into America. Now, fentanyl kills something like 100,000 American citizens a year. Fentanyl comes from China to Mexico and Canada. And the cartels cut drugs with it and then ship it over to the United States. And because of the porous borders, they've been able to do it unchecked for the last 4 years. So Donald Trump said to Canada and Mexico, stop that crap or tariffs. Canada responded and said, well, we're going to tariff you back. But in an ice hockey game, when they played the US anthem during at the beginning of the match, which they do every time, the Canadians booed.
Yeah, so it was a game between the Ottawa Senators and Minnesota Wild, and the US anthem was played, and those Canadian fans, the game was in Ottawa, of course, in Canada, and those Canadian fans booed when the US anthem was on. That wasn't the only example of it. On Sunday, during an NBA game between the Toronto Raptors and the LA Clippers, it happened again. Booing during the US anthem there. So that's where it relates to sport. Yeah. That's why it's on our rundown. It just seems like people maybe take what Trump says a bit too literally. Often it's just he's using it as a negotiation tactic. Yeah. And that's not really what he's going to do. He's just using it as a way of getting what he wants in the negotiation. And, well, in this case, it's been an effective negotiation tactic.
As of this morning, we were talking about it before, both Canada and Mexico have both released statements saying that the tariffs are on hold and they would be spending billions of dollars and sending 10,000 troops to the border to strengthen the borders between America and Canada and America and Mexico. So, no tariffs, but strengthened borders. Yeah. Justin Trudeau's tweeted this morning, just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the new choppers, technology and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl.
I'll tell you what, I think we know who's wearing the pants in the relationship between Trump and Trudeau, right?
Then Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said she talked to Mr. Trump for 45 minutes. We spoke about our common interests. We said that we'd be working together about migration, which worked well. Spoke about the interest that he has and how we have in reducing the flow of fentanyl and other drugs. Mexico has agreed to put 10,000 more troops on the border. And so the tariffs are on hold. So you can boo all you want. Honestly, I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. But you can boo all you want. But his process is working. You know, he said before he was going to come in power, one thing he wanted to do was get rid of the illegal immigrants and the criminals that have been going over the border, and he wanted to strengthen the border and stop the flow of fentanyl. They should stop the flow of fentanyl. They should. It's a terrible thing. Yeah. Everyone should go on the internet and look at those pictures of, like, this is how much fentanyl can kill you. And it's like a grain of salt. And, you know, the cartels are cutting drugs. And it's not just like cocaine and stuff they're cutting as well. Because of the healthcare issues in America, people go to Mexico or buy prescription meds off the street that are made by the Mexican cartel. There's a Mariana Vanzella, Trafficked with Mariana Vanzella episode about it, I think it's season 3, where the cartels have branched out into prescription drugs. But they're fake. They're usually sugar tablets with fentanyl in them. And people are buying them and overdosing and dying. It's not just like dudes who are, you know, looking for cocaine on the weekend or a shot of heroin. It's people who, like, can't afford medication and so get really desperate and buy illegal medication and then die from a fentanyl overdose. So, you know, that's his number one goal. And I support people stopping drug overdoses. And if you don't, you're crazy.
Yeah, 100%. So there's been a recent update to that story. Just this morning, just before we started recording the podcast, you alerted me to that update to this story.
So the borders are now getting closed and there's no more tariffs, so Canada shouldn't have booed. Still on Donald Trump, though. Noted Donald Trump supporter Bryce Mitchell, who fights for the UFC, launched his podcast earlier last week and opened it up, during the podcast, decided he would discuss Hitler and the history of Hitler. And you watch the clip and you just, oh my God. Of course, it was immediately on Reddit, like less than a minute after he launched his podcast. What he said was he's done his own research. Everyone should do their own research. And Hitler was actually a pretty good guy before he got on meth.
Yeah, what a lunatic.
He's just an idiot. That guy's a flat earther, by the way, just so everyone knows. Bryce Mitchell is a flat earther. He's a really, really, like, a Bible-bashing, like, bad type of Christian. I support everyone to believe in whatever religion they want, but he's like one of those, the earth started only 6,000 years ago type Christians. He has He hates Elon Musk. So everyone goes on about how he's massively right-wing and a Donald Trump supporter, but he hates Elon Musk. He actually has said he dislikes Jews. And people keep giving him, like I've said it multiple times to people during the week, they're like, oh, that guy's been punched in the head one too many times. Don't give him that excuse. He's just an ignorant, racist bigot.
Yeah.
It's not about being punched in the head.
Yeah, and Dana White said that he's not going to punish him. He's all about freedom of speech. He's not going to take any action against him, but he said, look, I just hope somebody beats the hell out of him the next time they fight.
You watch Dana White hammered him. Hammered him. He has to be the dumbest person in the world. Remember, this is the guy that drilled into his nutsack accidentally. That's one of the Bryce Mitchell stories. He accidentally drilled through his nutsack and then put the drill in reverse and pulled it out.
Wow.
Dumbest UFC person. In a sport that is notorious for having dumb people, that guy is the dumbest person. He's backtracked now. Of course he has. Because of the hate. But you watch his backtrack and the comments on it, and there's a whole bunch of dirty racists saying, don't back down, we know the truth. Look, if you're going to have nonsense and say you've done your own research, and the research is available, again, this comes back to his citing TikTok babble, this nonsense, and passing it off as fact and having done research. And one of the things he said, you can pick apart somebody I've done research by small things they say. One of the things he said, which is nonsense, you have to actually do your research to know, but he said Hitler was a good guy before he started meth. Now, if you read Norman Ohler's book Blitzed, which is all about, he was the guy who uncovered that the Nazis were all on meth. They were all on meth. It's crazy. It wasn't just, it was Germany. Germany invented meth. Yeah. And it was an over-the-counter drug that you could buy. And 3/4 of the country were on it before World War II. It was marketed as a way to enhance productivity in the workplace. So office workers were all just junked up on meth, right? Yeah. And one of the things that Norman Ohler talks about is in Hitler's doctor's diary, he was very strict about keeping notes. Hitler didn't take meth. He was a mad oxy fiend, though. He was really always on Oxycontin and Oxycontin. Oh. So if you're going to say, I've done my own research, and you're saying something stupid before he got on meth, bro didn't take meth, man. So your whole research is clearly wrong. Yeah,
I don't think his sponsors would have been too happy with that comment somehow.
I don't even know. UFC is really restrictive with sponsorship anyway, so he may not even have sponsors. And Dana White's justification is now you're going to get more eyes on it. Because people will hate him and want him to.
That's the thing. I think Dana White, while he's come out publicly and denounced him as he should have, privately he'll probably be liking that.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to add interest to his
fight. Well, it's not even private. He in his statement where he said he's stupid and he said I'm not going to punish him, and one of the reasons we're going to keep him is because now more people will watch.
Oh, yeah, and I've got the quote from Dana White here. He says, that's the beautiful thing about this business. For all of you that hate Bryce Mitchell, you get to see him hopefully get his ass whooped on global television.
Yeah, that's it.
There you go.
It's not even private about it. It's public about it. And because that's the thing with Bryce Mitchell, right? He's not being healed because it's a show, say, Colby Covington. And I've talked about it before. Colby Covington was famously about to get dropped by the UFC. He was about to walk out and fight... I think it was RDA in Brazil, who's a Brazilian hero, and was told, you're boring, no one likes you, after this, your contract's over anyway, this is your last fight, you're not going to get renewed. Bit screwed up to tell that to a guy who's about to walk out and fight someone. He bashed RDA, gets on the microphone and says, Brazil's a dump and all you people are filthy animals in Brazil. Right? Immediately turned heel. Immediately it became a thing that everyone wants to watch Colby Covington get his head kicked in. Became friends with Donald Trump. Gets phone calls from Donald Trump after he wins matches and stuff like that in the press conferences. Everyone hates him. Everyone wants to watch Colby Covington get bashed. His pay-per-view numbers went through the roof. So that's what Dana White sees. He sees dollars in Bryce Mitchell. Now he's going to put Bryce Mitchell on main cards in pay-per-views because people are going to buy pay-per-views to watch Bryce Mitchell get his head bashed in, like when Ila Topuria bashed him, like when Josh Emmett bashed him. I've seen the Josh Emmett bashing, knocking Bryce Mitchell out and sending him into convulsions clip at least 1,000 times. At least. Right? by different people. So yeah, like Bryce Mitchell is an idiot. He used to be well loved, actually. He used to be a fan favorite. He was the one who convinced. They do a thing with custom shorts now. He wanted camo shorts, and he kept saying it after every win. And so now the UFC does custom shorts for main event fighters, and Bryce Mitchell has his camo shorts. Everyone thought it was really cool, but now everyone hates him. Well deserved.
Yeah, 100%.
And finally, NFL has announced that they're bringing the NFL back to Australia. If you remember, they played some game some years ago.
I think that might have been. Was it the baseball? I think they had baseball games here. Because I went to a baseball game. I think it was at the SCG. Might have been about 2014. I think the LA Dodgers might have played in that one. I definitely went to a baseball game, but I can't remember the NFL play. Again, my memory probably only goes back about 30 years. But I can't remember the NFL playing games in Australia, like actual competition games in Australia before. But apparently the MCG will reportedly host multiple NFL regular season games starting in 2026. According to the Herald Sun, the Los Angeles Rams and Philadelphia Eagles, the two franchises with Australian marketing rights, are set to face off in October next year. That's 2026.
Yeah.
It's one of up to 3 NFL regular season meetings that Melbourne will open its doors to across several years, per the report, with the high-profile events to net Victoria tens of millions of dollars. In another win for Victoria, the state is said to be the sole host of the matches, ruling out any possibility of games at Sydney's Accor Stadium, our favourite stadium, that one, or Perth's Optus Stadium.
I don't know if Perth Optus Stadium has seating enough for it. But no, they haven't actually played. It was baseball I was thinking of.
I went to one of those baseball games. I think it was at the SCG. Yep.
It'll be an interesting watch. Like Super Bowl is next week.
It's the 10th of Feb, isn't it, for us? Yeah.
And it's hard for... Joe Rogan actually talks about it. He went to a soccer game, right? Because there's... in America, those American sports, there's a lot of stoppages for advertising. In Australia and most, like a bunch of sports like soccer, rugby league, and stuff like that, it's hard for American advertisers to get bored because there's not enough stoppages. Man, I've watched an NFL game that we were like, let's leave in 10 minutes and 15 seconds passed on the clock. It's a hard watch. I don't know what people are going to do at the games. But I've been to, like, basketball has crap tons of stoppages in the Australian one and in the American one. Way more in America. I've been to American basketball games in America and Australian basketball games. And it's the show. That's what keeps you there. So for me, it's a hard watch on television because... something happens for 15 seconds, and then there's a minute of ads. And then something happens for 15 seconds, but at the games, something happens for 15 seconds, and then there's a minute of a show. So it'll be an interesting watch. I might, if it was in Sydney, I'd probably go, but I'm not going to fly to Melbourne for it.
Yeah, look, Melbourne people will go along. It's a big sporting city, obviously, with the Australian Open down there, the Formula One down there, etc., etc. So yeah, they'll go along just for the event. You know, it's an NFL, it's a proper NFL game in Australia at the MCG. They'll pack the MCG for that just because of the event. There's no doubt about it. They'll pack the MCG for that. Whether they'll enjoy the spectacle, I'm not so sure. Obviously, it's going to be very different to Aussie rules football. But yeah, they will go along. As I say, it's an event, people will be drawn to it for sure. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. I think we'll all tune in, just for the novelty value of it. An NFL game being played in Australia. I think we'll certainly all be tuning in for that.
I'll give it a watch, but it's a hard watch, For Australian,
it will be.
Australian sports fans, it's a hard watch.
It is. We're just not used to it. The AFL and the rugby league are a lot more free flowing than the NFL. And
you think about,
and that's just how it is. We've been brought up on either rugby league or Aussie rules here. And so for us, it is difficult to watch the very slow American football.
You think about when they used to play the second Friday night game in the NRL on delay, and they cancelled that because people would stop watching, and one of the major reasons they stopped watching was because it was on delay and it wasn't live, they would put more ads in it.
Yeah.
And people were like, I don't want the ads. But when you watch the NFL, there's a lot of ads.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, and people, and rightly, they complain about all the stoppages with captain's challenges and HIAs and everything. Even that's a hard watch, let alone the amount of stoppages that'll be in an NFL game.
Yeah, an NFL player is like 10 seconds long, 15 seconds long.
And then they have a 5-minute break in some instances.
And then they have like a certain amount of timeouts per quarter that they call constantly and stuff like that. So yeah, it's still cool, It's good to see. That's it for the week. As I said, PC will be in on next Tuesday to preview the season. Let's find out what he says about the Roosters. Don't forget to go to Optimum CBD, optimumcbd.store for all of your CBD needs. Must be over 18 to order, and deliver. Orders over $99 get free delivery. Check out Smart Play. More cricket matches are coming, but the NRL and AFL are coming. And make sure you sign up to the SmartB newsletters and daily updates, and follow SmartB on all socials at SmartB app and also at SmartB Smart Play. Cool. See you next week, Dan.
Thanks, Sean. Catch you next week.
Yeah, baby. We'll see what Nick Kyrgios has got for us.
Yeah.
Or Trell Mitchell.
Yeah. Oh, there'll be no doubt they'll keep themselves in the news. There's no doubt about that.
Alrighty. Bye, producer chair.